What is going on, everybody? And in this video, I'll be showing you the new bike that was added, the Kawasaki GPZ 900R Ninja in the touring class. Now, technically, this bike isn't actually new, but technically only new in this class because it's already in the street class. Nonetheless, though, it's actually pretty dang decent. I'd say a lot of people are pretty familiar with this thing from using it in the Summit recently. Nonetheless, though, how is it overall? Well, when it comes to customization, not much can be done in this thing except the color change there. If you guys want to add a Ubisoft color to the bike, you can change it there if you want. Personally, I'm just going to leave it red, though, because I think it looks pretty cool like that. And I got to admit, this is probably one of those bikes you probably never see on a touring race like that. Nonetheless, though, because it's, well, not made for that matter. It's a pretty awesome looking bike overall. The one in the street class isn't one I don't see used that often. I have a feeling this one's going to be the exact same way. It is a cool looking bike, but it's probably not going to be the most usable thing, especially compared to something like the Panigale R. Even the Ninja H2 in the video I posted yesterday, that thing is also pretty dang decent, except for its heavier weight with its turning ability there could be an issue. This bike does have really good maneuverability, and overall the speed is decent. Anyway, let's go do a top speed run on it, and let's see what this bike can actually do in a race. Now, spawning outside here, taking a look at the Kawasaki GPZ 900R. Now, obviously, this bike is not new because there's one in the street class. That one actually has the plate and the turn signals and the mirror and all that, and it looks a little bit different. Nonetheless, though, this thing looks pretty awesome in racing form in the touring car class. I gotta admit, I do dig the look. Let's take a look at the cockpit view right now to see what this thing actually looks like. So we have the original RPM reader and then the miles per hour there. Let's rev it up. Sounds pretty good for the most part. I gotta admit, obviously, it's gonna sound like the other bikes, I think, a little bit. Let's do it one more time. Pretty much the same. Now, let's go do an acceleration top speed run. So the acceleration on this bike is probably going to be pretty similar to the other ones as well. Main reason for that is, well, a lot of the bikes are pretty balanced in being the same. Now, what I mean by that is I noticed the top speeds of these all seem to be around the same, which is about 235 miles an hour. It's probably a way to balance them out compared to the touring cars. I think the reason for that is some of the touring cars do 250, 260. And that's pretty insane. But none of the bikes can hit that speed, which is probably a way to balance them out against them. Some of these can turn pretty dang well. And a lot of leaderboards on a lot of the races where you can actually use the bikes on. So notice some of the races do not work there. You can actually get really good scores. And the Panigale R is pretty much on top, and all of those. That bike is basically the king. So let's do a top speed run right now. So full speed, 235 miles an hour when using the nitrous there. Now, I don't really think there's a point of maxing it out. But hitting 234 is pretty easy there, and you don't really go through too much nitrous. This thing gets up to speed pretty nicely. Now let's see how this thing will actually do in a race. Now, taking the new GPZ into a race here. Now, I gotta admit, this bike's actually better than I thought it was going to be. When I first saw it, I was kind of concerned on this thing being kind of terrible. And to be honest, it's really not as bad as I thought. The handling's actually pretty decent, and when using this thing in the Summit, I feel like a lot of people are going to know how this bike actually handles and all that if they're going to plan to use it in the future. Which I would probably say a lot of people probably end up picking the GP bikes or even the new Ninja H2 compared to this thing. Nonetheless, though, it has some pretty dang good maneuverability for what it does. And, for example, right there flying around those turns, I had no issues at all. Sometimes the bikes can feel kind of heavy or weird, and obviously this bike is around 500 pounds as well. So it's going to be pretty heavy, but it does turn pretty dang good for what it is, and I thought it was going to do kind of bad when I first drove it. I was like, oh, this thing's not going to be that good. But flying around this turn here, as you guys see, in third gear, flew around at 130. Now, one thing I did notice about driving the Kawasaki is going to be its speed. I got to admit, this thing is not the greatest with its speed. I think that's one thing that might be flawing it back compared to the lovely Panigale R or even the newer Ninja H2. That thing has a lot of power, but that thing does struggle a little bit on the turns. Now, this thing is going to struggle a little bit with its speed, but it does pretty good on the turns, so they're kind of opposite of each other. I wouldn't say this bike is terrible, but when it comes to, trying to get the best speed and all that and trying to get the best time in these summits, this bike probably won't be chosen in the touring class at all. I think the Panigale R is going to keep that crown for a while because it's just so good overall. The maneuverability, the speed, and, well, it looks awesome as well. Even the GP bikes are also pretty dang decent. When I was testing those out a little bit originally, I was pretty impressed with them. Those have great speed and maneuverability as well, and I just feel like the Ninja might struggle a little bit in some areas. But nonetheless, it's a pretty cool looking bike, and I have to admit that. So let's go take a look right now at the first person view a little bit more when racing here. This thing also has a pretty dang decent top speed as well. Now, I did show that before, going 234 miles an hour, which I noticed all the touring vehicles, well, at least compared to the bikes anyway, they all have around the 235 mile an hour mark. The cars can do over 250 normally, like the lovely Renault RS01, which is my favorite. I think does 250. So if you guys are trying to do longer races and stuff, do keep in mind these bikes have a lower top speed, which could mess things up a little bit. I gotta admit though, The overall like look of this bike is pretty cool, and I do love the style of the older motorcycles like this. Let me hit the brakes here. The brakes are also pretty impressive when it comes down to getting in the right gear to get around the turns. It doesn't seem to have too many issues there, which is something I definitely look for when using these. The Pinigale is just insanely good though. I don't think this bike will be able to take the crown away from it at this moment at least. Nonetheless, so if you guys looking to cruise around or if you're grinding races out in the touring class, you could pick this bike up and use it mainly because, well, I feel like a lot of people will have it anyway because of the recent summit. You could do some races and mess around with it or just cruise around the bike though, because it is pretty cool looking. Kind of gives you like that older cruiser style vibe, like want to just cruise around on this thing a little bit, which it could do great for that. Overall racing ability though, the speed might make this thing struggle a bit. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to show you all my settings coming up next here. Let me know your thoughts on the GPZ 900R. Are you guys going to use this thing? I know the Ninja H2 might be a little bit better and maybe better looking for that matter, but nonetheless though, we got to love the style of this bike for what it is. And here are the settings I'm running on my Kawasaki GPZ 900R Ninja.